Okay, there's a few tools we can use to try and determine the cause of an application crash. And this is true for really any application. A crash usually occurs when the CPU or some code is trying to do something that it wasn't designed to do. For example, some of the old processors, and I think even the new ones, have a divide by zero interrupt, where if you try to divide something by zero, it will crash. And I think some of that has to do with the way the chips are designed. Basically, they're transistor gates, just tons of transistor gates layered on top of each other. So the gating is not really designed for that kind of function, and the CPU can't execute that kind of instruction. Also, software can set up breakpoints. It can set up where it will force a crash under certain conditions. The operating system can keep track of housekeeping, or what programmers often refer to as sanity checking. So, sanity checking is, let's say you have a memory pool, and this memory pool has all these different chunks assigned to different applications. If the memory pools delink, then there's memory corruption, or there's corruption in the pool allocation, which the allocation functions, which also create the linking tables, which means you've got a problem. So some memory can get used again. It's a bad situation. So integrity or sanity checking oftentimes is used in functions or routines or programs, even in appies, so that the application runs and performs as it should. Okay, so that being said, you can have like I said, you can have a hardware crash where the hardware simply cannot do what it's asked to do, or you can have an a Windows an application crash that can be caused by an embedded API or DLL, where something is gotten corrupt, or there's a problem with something, or the data is bad, or the programmer can literally force an exit with a specific code, which causes the application to crash or exit out with a certain code. Um, so let's just take a look at some of the things we can do. All right, so to start out with, let's talk about like just crashes, okay? So here's Fallout 3. This is the game I'm modding now. I'm going to wait until Fallout 4 is completely done updating, and therefore I don't have to my mods aren't constantly breaking, and I don't have to backport the thing or roll it back to any previous version. All right, so if you take a look over here, things in red are crashes. And you're going to see quite a few, because I was trying to figure out what was causing the crash, what area, and like if I crashed in a certain cell or a certain area, I would try to get closer to that cell, and then get in the cell, move out, and then try to save to see if it was a data issue. And I think some of these have to do with data issues, and I'll tell you why in just a second. So you can see all these different crashes. Sometimes crashes doubled up, and you had two different crashes. So the question is, like, where does this information come from? Well, this is Fallout 3, so Buffout 4 doesn't exist. There's no Buffout 4 to catch a crash in the game. So this information, this crash information, comes from the system, the event viewer. So anytime there's an application crash, your operating system will store the event in the event viewer. And there's a couple ways we can get to that. In this particular case, just to kind of show you an overall view, because the event viewer has events for all applications, so it gets big fast, and manually searching through it can kind of be a pain. So what I did is I simply went online, looked up code to access the events in the event viewer, and then I just simply cycle through these events and select events that meet a certain criteria. In my example here, I select events that are associated with the game I'm playing. To get a better look at this, let's go over this way and let's grab this right here. So this shows you all the crashes that I've had with Fallout 3. Now, different applications do things differently, but this application here, it actually, whenever you play a game, if the game when the game exits, it checks to see if the game crashed. If it has, it records that. That's what this information is here, these little red things. But this information comes from the system's event viewer database, or the event database. So as you can see, there's a lot of crashes. Now sometimes when the game crashes, it doesn't throw up a little window saying the application has stopped working. Oftentimes it'll just exit the desktop. So a lot of times users and gamers they'll just exit out and they go, I crashed to desktop, which they call a CTD, crash to desktop. But there's nothing that really tells them what happened. Buffout tries to intercept that, and that's in Fallout 4, which is assuming what you're talking about is Fallout 4. However, sometimes there's a crash that Buffout will not catch. It's caught by the operating system first. Or Buffout doesn't catch it, and then it falls back to the operating system. And those you cannot use a Buffout log for. Alright, so you can see there's different kinds of crashes. So what I first want to show you is, so we're talking crashes now. So what I want to talk about is a crash metric. So let's see what the biggest crashes are, or the most frequent crashes is a better way to put it. So what we'll do is we'll go over here and we'll just do a graph history. And you can see that the majority of crashes are an invalid access. I believe 005 is, let's take a look. Yeah, it's to read or write. Okay, that isn't. Okay. So it looked like that the majority of the crashes, at least for Fallout 3 for me, was trying to access memory that the game wasn't allowed to write to. Now, read or write to. Usually that means that the reference is 0. So it's trying to write to memory address 0, which is reserved for the operating system. So that's an instant crash. And you can see the 15s, the 409s. Now, 409 is another error. I mean, I got the 5s with Fallout 4, and I also got the 409s. So if we look up a 409, you can actually see it's a stack buffer overrun. So what that means is there's something that's reoccurring. There's something. It's like a function that calls itself. So it gets stuck in a loop. So every time a function calls another function, it has to store return information on the stack. So the stack is limited in size. Even if you extend it, even if you can, like a heap or a stack or a working heap, even if you make that larger, if you're stuck in a loop and you never get out, that stack will fill up, and then it's going to give a buffer overrun. So every time a function calls another function, it stores information on the stack. So if a function is calling itself, it's never pulling that information back off the stack or freeing that memory up. So it just starts marching down towards the limit until it fills up, and you will get this crash. I got these kind of crashes with Fallout 4. I think when I think it had something to do with the order of the plugins and or leveled lists. It was either leveled lists where things are being injected and somehow it got stuck in a loop. I'm not really sure. I did get that occasionally. And I think it's where something kept calling itself repeatedly. I can't remember. I think there was a couple bugs in different scripts that can somehow get caught in a loop, and that can cause that particular error. It's just something you have to play around with. What I usually do is I try to get to a point to where it doesn't crash, and then figure out what I did. You know, you try to have these different samplings. Okay, it doesn't crash, it crashes. What did I do different? What were the different variables? Like locations, was that something I added something to? Is it Was it something where NPCs were being generated? Now, if there's a problem with NPCs being generated, you won't actually see the crash. I mean, you won't actually see the NPCs before it crashes, especially if you're loading a cell. It'll load, it'll try to generate everything, and then it crashes before the cell fully loads. So that makes it very difficult to actually tell what was occurring at the time of the crash. And then I had these other unknowns. This was like, this right here is like an unknown, and that's like an unknown. So an unknown could be where something gets corrupted, or honestly, I couldn't tell you. That's something that takes a lot of research, and you have to be able to replicate it, and you got to use a debugger to see exactly what's causing the issue, and that's a lot of work. But you can tell here, like if you notice, there's a lot of 15s, 409s. Now this stuff started to occur. See, 409s, this stuff started to occur when I was playing around with a merge patch or a bashed patch. Now with the merge patch, sometimes I created a merge patch with Xedit, or in this case Fallout 3 Edit, but then I went to manually make changes myself. So that could have caused some redundancy, or something to happen in the game engine, cause a recurrent something in a script or something where it just filled up the stack and then it crashed. And then you can also take a look at addresses. You can see that one of the nice things about the way that I approach this, or what I like to look at, is I can see which address the crash occurred at. Now this might be good for Buffout or Fallout 3, and you can get this information from the event viewer. But this is where I got this from. So I think if we look at About Crash, let's see, yeah, no. You can actually see the information. But I got this from Event Viewer. So the address and everything is right there. So how do we do it? There's a couple ways we can do this. You can go in and take a look at Event Viewer, which is over here. So you want to go into this little box here, which is your search, and you want to do Event Viewer. And once the Event Viewer comes up, you can take a look at Windows Logs and Application. Now this is where I'm getting the data from, but as you can see, there is a whole lot of stuff in here, like a lot. So trying to figure out which one is which can cause a problem. Now if the crash just happened, you might be able to go into Event Viewer and actually see it up here at the top. Because what you're looking for is Fallout 4 EXE. So that's the manual way to do it. Or what I did is I cut part of this code out, and I made a little application called, let me grab this real quick. It's called let's see, where are we? Not that one. Maybe this one here. I created a little application called, it's right here. It's Show Crash Events, right? You can I'll link it on the page where you can download it from my Google Drive. And basically, it's just a command shell. It's just a command shell application. It's what I call a quick and dirty. It's not a pretty application. It doesn't have a lot of interface stuff, and it just basically goes into the Event Viewer, and looks for events for a particular program. I'll show you here. I've kind of already done it. I've got this installed already. It's a standalone program, and it's got certain parameters that you can use if you want to take a look and see what it has. You can see where it's real simple application. Like I say, it just reads the event viewer and it looks for particular programs. So basically what I'm doing is I'm saying show crash events, the program I'm looking for, or in effect the string I'm looking for. Let's just say Fallout, and I think upper and lowercase will be fine. Let's look for Fallout3.exe. And you can see what it does. It dumps all the events for Fallout3.exe. And as you can see, there is a lot of information here. You've got the time of the crash, the faulting module. You've got the exception code. Now, I think I only print specific information. It's got the Fallout 3 version, things like that. The address is in here, but I don't think I'm actually showing it, at least not with this. But this will show you the cause of the crash. See the exception code? You can do the same for Fallout 4 just by changing the program you're looking for. See, there's Fallout 4 crashes. Or you can do the same for New Vegas. I think it's NV. And this works for any program. So it just looks for the name of the program you give it in the events, and it prints everything it finds. So you can use that application. Now, if you want to create a text file, all you got to do is pipe it. You put a pipe, which is like a greater than sign, and then you put a file name. So you could put, whatever you want to call it, well, not question mark, but a pipe. So you want to say Fallout New Vegas log or something, whatever you want to call it. And if you hit this, then what it'll do, it'll create a text file for everything that it just dumped to the command shell. It's called a pipe. And then we can type it. If you want to take a look at it, we can go in and type it. Let's see. See, and you can actually see the contents of the file. Now, what's nice about piping it to a file, you can then upload that file to a forum. Like, let's say, the SS2 forum. You can say, these are the crashes I'm getting. But this is a little application. It's just a quick application that helps you see what your events are. It has a configuration file built in. You can change it however you want. So all you got to do is just extract this to a folder, and then you just need to run it. You can do it in the command shell. That's what I'm doing here. If you click on it, if you double click on it to run it, it's going to open the shell, dump the stuff, and then close the shell. So you're going to need to do it from a command. It's a command line function. So it's pretty easy to use, just like I was showing you. It's not hard at all. You can get it off my Google Drive. I'll link it. Just let me know if you have a problem with it. I normally use these things here, and these are not things that I normally just upload for everybody to share. It's been there. I've linked it before. So I can't tell you if it'll work on XP, 7, because it's compiled under a certain Visual Studio. It uses a certain release, so an API release, so it may or may not work on all operating systems. Just let me know if it works for you or if you have any problems with it. So that's how you can take a look at that. Now, to answer your question about viewers, something that you can use to view. Let's see if I've already done it. Something you can use to view an overlay. So let's take a look and see what we have. All right, so we have MSI Afterburner, Riva Tuner. Now, I've used Riva Tuner before. You can download Riva Tuner or MSI Afterburner, either one. Afterburner allows you to overclock, but I wouldn't do any of the overclocking stuff. I would just use the overlay or just use Riva Statistics Tuner. To do that, what you want to do is you want to take a look at, as an example, so you would download it from here, and which is Guru 3D. Get the most current version, and then just install it, and you'll have to configure it. Now there's a config. You have to go in and actually configure it to show the overlay. You know, like display frame rates and things like that. You need to just kind of configure it. It's not that hard, but you tell it what you want to see on the screen. So when you fire your game off, you should see the overlay. It'll be wherever you tell it, upper left, upper right. The positioning is where you tell it. You can use that. Or you can use MSI Afterburner. Now, another option you have is to use the software, which I would recommend, that comes with your graphic card. Mine is AMD. So I can go over here to the Performance tab, and I can go to Overlay, and I can turn the overlay on. Here's where I position it, transparency, and then I can tell it what I want to track. I can tell it whether I want to track CPU usage, GPU usage, memory usage, and all that. Now, one of the things I do track, and you're not going to be able to see this because it doesn't actually record this, but over here it puts the little graphic over here. So when I play a game, it's going to show me the graphics memory that's used, CPU usage, and all of that information. So it'll tell you, like, if you have so much memory available, how much memory is being used, and that way you can tell if your GPU bottlenecked, which means your GPU is at 100%, or your memory usage is at 100%, is constantly rolling things out, or if your CPU bottlenecked, which means the CPU is maxing out. So if your GPU is low and your CPU usage is max, then you're what is called CPU bottlenecked. It's your CPU that is inhibiting game performance. Now, this is outside of optimization within the game and all of that. If your GPU is at 100 but your CPU is low and your frame rate is low, then that's GPU bottlenecked. The size of the textures, the complexity of the meshes, the size of the screen, your screen resolution, all attributes to the amount of data that the GPU needs to handle. So the more data the GPU needs to handle, then the more powerful the GPU needs to be. The more memory, the more actual VRAM, video RAM, that the GPU needs. So that, you know, then that kind of explains a little bit of that. And I think that kind of covers, I think, what you were asking. Let me double check here before I link the video. Yeah, see if that helps. If not, just post back, and I'll see if I can maybe help a little bit more, or maybe give a little bit more information. Because a lot of times, well, most of the time, actually all the time, I kind of wing these things, so they have a tendency to be unedited, so they kind of go on for a little bit. And I apologize for the length of the video, but I hope some of that helps you understand what exceptions are and where I'm getting the data from. Which is, again, the event viewer. If it was Fallout 4, it will actually get it from both Google, from the event viewer and from Buffout. So I hope that helps. Let me know if there's anything else you need, and good luck figuring out what is causing your game to crash.